If war is hell, then its purveyors are devils, and their recruits are tragic victims of all of the devil's hubris. But we have to ask why some victims were selected and not others. Why did the devils go after a population which centered around lower IQ individuals? First, they did this because they knew the demographics of this group. Many of the individuals who tested as having a lower IQ did so because they didn't speak English, or English wasn't their first language, or because they were illiterate or hadn't finished school. Of course, there were also plenty of others who legitimately had lower natural IQs. But the point is that this demographic tended to draw from a lower class and, statistically, a higher percentage of minorities. And there's a second thing that you need to grasp here. You have to understand that a primary motivator for politicians has been, and still is, to avoid pissing off the middle class. That's something that we're going to talk more about in our next section on corporate propaganda, but it's really vital to understand. It's a common thread you're going to see constantly. The middle class is important because they are a large group of majority voters, whites. This group has power not only in votes, but also in understanding how to access the system. They have the means to access the system. They can contact senators, hire lawyers, and make a ruckus. Politicians don't like a ruckus, particularly in a population which could potentially vote against them. As George Carlin said, that's why they call it the American dream, because you have to be asleep to believe it. Whether it's that the middle class is asleep, or rather that they're doped up and sedated by opioids because our lives as a buffer against justice is a vacuous one, we're the ones who the propaganda is aimed at, and the ones who are buying into it. Don't pinch us and wake us up. Don't administer the Narcan. Just let us drift off into the depths of the empire until the smoke begins to rise and we awaken by screams, "Babylon the Great is fallen." If you're not too much of a Bible fan, maybe you can handle a Black Sabbath approach instead. In their song War Pigs, released in 1970, right smack dab in the middle of Project 100,000, they sang, "Politicians hide themselves away. They only started the war. Why should they go out and fight? They leave that role to the poor. Day of judgment, God is calling, on their knees the war pigs crawling, begging mercy for their sins. Satan laughing spreads his wings. Oh Lord, yeah."